Goodnight MH370. On March 8, 2014, the world's aviation industry was shaken by a stunning event. A plane carrying more than 200 passengers suddenly vanished from the sky. This led to the most expensive search effort in history, and nearly a decade later, people are still waiting in vain. Did the plane crash into the sea? Was it an act of terrorism? Was it shot down? Or is there another conspiracy theory to be explored? Was the world lied to and deceived? The clues are slowly being revealed. Eventually, the truth will be exposed. What will be the most compelling answer? This episode is about the most mysterious disappearance in modern aviation history, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. And as always, before we dive in, to help the ADB Mysteries channel grow, please give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's begin. At 11:11 p.m. on March 7, 2014, at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia, a Boeing 777-200ER was undergoing its final checks for a nearly 6-hour flight to Beijing, China. This specific Boeing 777 model is an improved version and the largest twin-engine aircraft in the world. There were 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board. Most of the passengers were Chinese nationals, along with 50 Malaysian citizens and people from 12 other countries, including Indonesia, Australia, and India. The flight was operated by veteran pilot Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53, and a young first officer, Farik Abdul Hamid, who had just transitioned to flying the Boeing 777 at the end of 2013. At 12:41 a.m., the plane was cleared for takeoff and turned onto runway 32. The crew's last communication before takeoff was, "Good evening." About 10 minutes after reaching a stable flight path, the captain contacted air traffic control and was cleared to climb to 25,000 feet. Shortly after, the flight was instructed to climb to 35,000 feet. The flight was proceeding smoothly, just like any other journey. At approximately 1:18 a.m., the plane began to enter the airspace over the South China Sea at an altitude of 10,770 meters. The sky was clear and calm. The crew's last communication to air traffic control in Vietnam was, "Good night, MH370." Just 1 minute and 43 seconds later, at exactly 1:22 a.m., the giant Boeing vanished without a trace from the radar screen. MH370 had truly fallen into a long sleep. All subsequent efforts to contact the flight and determine its location failed. The plane's transponder, a device that transmits signals, had stopped working. What on earth happened to it? Or did someone intentionally turn it off? No one had the answer. All they knew was that it was a world-shattering event. Immediately, the largest search in history was launched, with 26 countries participating and dozens of military aircraft and warships equipped with the most advanced search technology deployed across the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. 4 days after the incident, on March 12th, a small glimmer of hope appeared from Malaysian authorities. Their military radar, which does not rely on a transponder, had captured MH370's last signal at 2:40 a.m. The plane had deviated from its original flight path and suddenly turned left, passing over Penang Island, Malaysia, and then continued northwest. It flew for another 7 hours until it ran out of fuel and lost signal in the southern Indian Ocean. However, along with this announcement, Malaysia also admitted that the information was quite vague. They couldn't be certain of anything because their radar could only detect a flying signal, but couldn't identify the type of plane or the flight number. speculation began to peak. And people thought Malaysia was trying to cover up something related to military secrets. The searches continued without yielding any results. The public was stuck in a vicious circle with the question, what could have caused one of the world's largest planes, carrying 239 people, to disappear without a trace? Theories and evidence. As time passed, scientific analysis and perspectives began to reveal the truth behind the mysterious disappearance. One of the most widely supported conclusions, based on verified evidence, is that the plane crashed into the Indian Ocean. Like many other aircraft, the Boeing 777 is equipped with a satellite communication unit, or SATCOM, which receives and sends signals from the ground, providing a detailed flight log and all flight data before takeoff. This system was connected to Inmarsat in Australia. Analysis of satellite communication between the plane and the UK-based Inmarsat 3F1 satellite network concluded that the plane had flown along the southern Indian Ocean and crashed at a location within the so-called Seventh Arc, west of Australia. To further support this claim, experts also stated that the plane was equipped with an underwater locator beacon with a battery life of up to 40 days after an accident. If there was a strong enough impact, it could have created a sound that would be recorded by an underwater device called a hydrophone. Based on data collected from various stations, it was calculated that MH370 was at a depth of nearly 4,000 meters in the ocean. However, this was not enough to convince everyone. Some argued that the sounds were just from geological activity on the seafloor, and that the signals were too vague to draw an accurate conclusion. Just when things seemed to be at a dead end, on July 29, 2015, a compelling piece of evidence appeared on the island of Réunion. A piece of debris, 2.7 meters long and 1 meter wide, was confirmed to be a flaperon from a Boeing 777. It had been soaked in water for about 6 months and was covered in algae. In addition, many other pieces of debris were found along the coastlines of southeastern Africa, with at least 31 of them recovered during the investigation. Boeing experts identified these parts as belonging to the engine casing, landing gear, and tail of the plane. However, it should be noted that despite finding what was believed to be the key to solving MH370's disappearance, a large-scale search covering a 120,000 km² area with the assistance of unmanned submarines yielded no results. According to Professor Charita Patiarachi of the University of Western Australia, based on his research and calculations, if a crash had occurred, debris from the plane would have surfaced in the area around Réunion Island within 18 to 24 months. But at the current rate, it seemed too early, and it was very difficult to make a determination. Many people wondered if the discovered debris was even from MH370. And if it was, why did it fly off course? Why did it crash into the Indian Ocean? The fire and pilot suicide theories. These questions led to a theory that, like many other flights, the plane had caught fire. According to recorded information, before takeoff, 11 tons of cargo were loaded onto the plane. This included a consignment containing 221 kilos of lithium-ion batteries, which are highly flammable and explosive. Even if the batteries weren't the cause, aviation experts said the plane could have still caught fire due to an electrical short circuit. When a fire occurs on a plane, the first thing pilots need to do is turn off the main electrical circuit, and then turn each circuit back on until they find the one with the problem. This would mean that the plane's radar signals, transponder, and SATCOM would also malfunction or be completely disabled. In this emergency situation, the crew would be forced to control the faulty aircraft and tried to put out the fire, making it impossible to contact air traffic control. As a pilot with 18,365 hours of experience, Captain Zahari would have instinctively looked for the nearest airport to attempt a landing. Although returning to Kuala Lumpur was the shortest route, the area has difficult terrain with mountain peaks higher than 2,400 meters. So to be safer, the captain headed for Langkawi International Airport, which has a 4-kilometer-long runway and no obstacles for a slow descent. This is also why the plane changed direction. So why didn't it land at the airport as planned? The fire caused a sudden loss of oxygen, a rapid drop in cabin pressure, and the release of increasing amounts of toxic smoke. Despite having oxygen masks, the pilots would not have been able to hold on any longer. A similar incident had occurred on Helios Airways Flight 522, where all 3 crew members passed out, but the autopilot flew the plane for another 2 hours. As for MH370, it flew on its own for nearly 7 hours until it ran out of fuel at cruising altitude. At this point, some people began to object, saying that no autopilot could have kept the plane on such an unusual trajectory as MH370's, and that this theory lacked sufficient evidence. Public opinion then turned to a more plausible theory. The captain, who was flying the plane, intended to kill himself. Some Australian investigators pointed out on a television show that the Malaysian captain intentionally flew the plane out of radar range to crash it into the sea. They discovered that the plane's radar transponder was turned off before the final voice communication. In this case, no one but the captain would have had the authority to do this. According to pilot Simon Hardy, a veteran Boeing 777 pilot, Captain Zahari cut off the communication system, flew back and forth between Malaysian and Thai airspace, and turned toward his hometown of Penang for one last look. Psychologists also analyzed that instead of repeating the frequency to air traffic control, the captain's last words were, "Good night, MH370, as if he was ready to take all 239 people to their deaths with him. During the flight's unusual trajectory, a psychological struggle seemed to have occurred, and in the end, he waited for the plane to run out of fuel before letting it crash into the sea." What about the co-pilot? What was he doing at the time? Experts analyzed that the co-pilot was young, had recently transitioned to this type of aircraft, and had only a mere 38 hours of flight time on the Boeing 777. Combined with the hierarchical relationship in the cockpit, he would naturally have been unable to intervene in the captain's actions. This argument was met with fierce opposition and criticism from the captain's family and colleagues. Investigations revealed that the captain had a very happy life with his wife and children, a stable career, and no signs of psychological issues. If he really wanted to die, why didn't he just crash the plane into the water? Instead, he flew the plane for hours afterward before letting it crash into the Indian Ocean. After the controversy surrounding the captain ended, another conspiracy theory about MH370 emerged, this time related to politics. According to Malaysia's Straits Times on March 16, 2014, Captain Zahari was a member of the People's Justice Party, a Malaysian opposition coalition party led by politician Ibrahim Anwar. Anwar had just been sentenced to 5 years in prison for gay acts, which are illegal in Malaysia. This was believed to be the reason the captain flew the plane in circles in an attempt to free Ibrahim, but it failed. So, he crashed the plane into the most remote area of the southern Indian Ocean. This detail was not widely known because it was a political loophole that Malaysia tried to cover up. Third-party theories. Besides the theories related to technical issues in the crew, we must also consider the third-party factor. Hypothesis: the plane was hijacked. Back on the night of March 8, 2014 at Kuala Lumpur Airport, it was confirmed that 2 Iranian nationals were on the flight. The suspicious thing was that they were using fake passports under the names of Austrian and Italian citizens. This raised the question, were there extremist terrorists on the plane? Although cockpits on all airlines have been secured and are very difficult to access since the 9/11 attacks in the US, a flaw was discovered in the design of the Boeing 777. Its equipment bay is a very large room located right outside the cockpit door, near the galley. The key is that the access hatch is often left unlocked because they couldn't have anticipated anyone other than maintenance staff breaking into it. Even if someone did break in, they would have to be highly specialized and thoroughly trained to access the computer control system. However, the most impossible thing happened. The hijacker successfully entered the control bay and destroyed the communication systems and navigation components. Afterward, he depressurized the plane, causing the pilots and passengers to lose consciousness. Their goal was to take control of the plane. Regarding this conclusion, the Russian daily Moskovsky Komsomoles cited a Russian intelligence source in 2014, which was confirmed by some other foreign intelligence agencies, stating that Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 was hijacked by terrorists and is currently in southeastern Kandahar, Afghanistan, near the Pakistani border. They would use the plane for other purposes, and the passengers were taken hostage. More theories. While Malaysian aviation was still recovering from the earthquake of March 8th, Flight MH17, also operated by Malaysia Airlines, crashed after being shot down by a separatist group in eastern Ukraine. This led to another conclusion about MH370's fate. The plane was shot down during a joint military exercise between the US and Thailand. This theory was presented in a book titled Flight MH370 Mystery by British writer Nigel Cawthorne. In the context of the world's tense developments in the South China Sea, the author connected this event to the claims of witnesses who saw a plane on fire crashing into the Gulf of Thailand. Cawthorne explained that the military exercise included simulated ground, sea, and air warfare, as well as live fire drills. One team accidentally shot down MH370 because they mistook it for a plane attempting a 9/11 style attack. And of course, due to sensitive political and military issues, this secret would never be revealed. Besides these interconnected theories, a few other so-called darker conspiracy theories have emerged. Patent conspiracy MH370's disappearance is compared to the sinking of the Titanic and is linked to a patent. Just like the theory of J.P. Morgan's mass assassination in the Titanic tragedy, where he was accused of eliminating people who fiercely opposed the idea of establishing the U.S. Federal Reserve, MH370 also has a suspicious coincidence. 4 Chinese passengers on the flight worked for Freescale Semiconductor, a large American technology company. These 4 people were named in a U.S. patent for a space material called graphene, a substance considered capable of changing the aerospace industry. According to U.S. law, when one of the patent owners dies, their share of the ownership is transferred to the company, Freescale. Coincidentally, the main shareholder of Freescale is Jacob Rothschild, a member of the famous Rothschild family. No one can know what he did to cover up this incident, and it's important to remember that no possibility can be ruled out. Although 20 Freescale employees were on board MH370, they were all Malaysian and Chinese nationals, and none were U.S. citizens. Space-time anomaly. Another theory, strange but intriguing, is that MH370 entered a spacetime anomaly. In today's modern technological era, it is unthinkable for a large commercial aircraft like MH370 to vanish without anyone knowing what happened to it and the 239 people on board. The only logical answer could be some cosmic mystery that humans will never be able to truly explore. And who knows? Maybe MH370 did accidentally enter a space-time anomaly, and someday they will return to Earth as if they never disappeared. Alien abduction. Another theory, considered bizarre but attracting a lot of attention, is that MH370 was abducted by aliens. This is supported by a 2014 survey by a U.S. television network, where 10% of Americans believe this theory. Around the time of the incident, some Twitter users received strange messages with a meaningless encrypted sequence. Some people said the numbers were a set of coordinates that, when entered into Google Maps, led to a location in Africa near Malaysia. Although unverified, scientists have predicted that extraterrestrial forces are becoming more intelligent and inventing technologies far beyond human imagination. In the future, if a war between humans and aliens occurs, MH370 could be the secret hostage they are trying to hide. What's next? After a series of explanations for the disappearance of MH370, each of us has the right to believe which answer is the most fitting. And of course, as long as no further signs of the ill-fated plane have been found, we still have the right to hope for a scenario with the happiest ending. This is a wish and a heartfelt desire of those who have lost loved ones. They have never stopped hoping for a miracle that one day MH370 will return, or at least that the final truth will be revealed. This is similar to the heartbreaking story of siblings Eric, 11, and Ann Pin, 6, who lost their parents on the fateful flight. Their innocent question as children makes anyone who hears it silently grieve. When will Mom and Dad come home?